Madam Kallas, the table is set for us. We have been talking over the last couple of days about all of the different ways AI can help, that technology can make our lives easier, and how to make ordinary people take up the use of AI for more than just using them as personal counselors, which is apparently what most Americans do right now. You have been outspoken on the need to regulate big tech. And I have to say, as someone who lives in the US, if it were not for GDPR, et cetera, I would have fewer rights. So what's the state of play? Because in the White House, they feel a little bit differently about big tech right now.
First, I really want to say I'm happy to be here. I was thinking that there is empty room because, you know, the conference is nearly over and everything. But I'm glad to see so many of you here. And second, you know, this library, when I was Prime Minister, I gave a lot of money for reconstruction. So, I mean, now it's ready. Apparently, it even has furniture because that was the big issue. So I'm happy to see that as well. But coming to the topic, then, of course, you know, tech has brought us a lot of good. If we think about democracy, I mean, people can interact better, they can get access to information. I mean, there is so much good that technology has brought, and this is what we have to keep in mind: the participation of people, accountability also for certain things. We can name a lot of different events from different parts of the world where really the technology has helped democracy. But there are also more and more downsides that we see. We see mis and disinformation. We see election interference. We see also, you know, fake news. We see also artificial intelligence really boosting this. I mean, you can't really tell what is right, what is wrong, what you can trust. And democracy is built on trust. So if people can't really trust what they hear or see, then they also, you know, are more easily manipulated on one side, or they refrain from, you know, taking the decisions altogether because they don't know what to believe and what not to believe. What we have to understand is that technology is a human construct. It's not, you know, all the laws that govern it also are human-made. It's not natural laws that govern something that is happening in the digital sphere. So it is the laws, how it is designed, also how it's used, but also how it is regulated. And of course, you know this joke that the verb for Brussels is regulate, whereas the verb for America is innovate. Or actually, the verb for Silicon Valley is innovate. The verb for Washington is litigate. I don't know what it's nowadays, actually.
Oh, that's so apt right now.
Yeah, no, but this is, I mean, on the good side. Now, to your question, yes, we have in Europe taken the approach that, as it is human-made, it also has to have rules that are human-made. And as I know that Commissioner McGrath was also speaking here earlier today about the European Democracy Shield, what we tried to do really, and there are some good examples. I mean, Moldova just very recently is a very, very good example where we actually use those tools in favor of democracy. I mean, fighting false information, also, you know, trying to overcome the election interference, helping them with also, you know, the cyber attacks that were against the Electoral Commission, and fighting the FIMI, the false information about the European Union and Maya Sandu and everything that was there.
If I can interrupt, I just, at least as someone from North America, just heard FIMI for the first time. So if there's anyone in the audience who doesn't know, it's foreign information manipulation and influence.
Yeah,
so,
we are very much into these acronyms, really. I mean, this. I read my memos. Usually, where is it? What it means? Not FIMI. That's easy, but there are a lot of things that are not that easy.
But to your point, I mean, I love using something like Perplexity AI to, get an answer right before I go on air to give commentary on CNN. But I also know I have to look at the sources and then make sure that these sources, I have to then quickly scan the articles to make sure that the AI didn't make something up. Now, I know to do that, but I also know the subject matter well enough that I'm using it to remind me of dates, remind me of something that I covered 30 years ago or something like that. These answers that you can get from these big platforms are only as good as the data that gets put in. And if it's disinformation that starts inhabiting the web, what do you do?
Yeah. No, this is, of course, increasingly complex and problematic because as you say, it learns from what is already there. So it is really amplifying all the problems that we have there. So, of course, in schools we teach how really the kids could separate what are the, facts and how we try to teach them media literacy and so, but it's still very much blurred. Sometimes AI is very much trusted like trusted without questions asked. I always tell the kids actually that if you think about our ancestors, then they were physically weaker or stronger than us, and we are physically weaker because we gave our physical jobs to the machines. And now, if you are giving away your cognitive abilities, what happens to you?
Medical studies are proving that out. If you use too much AI, you start losing cognitive ability.
Because you trust too much what is there. And then now that comes, I mean, the heading of this debate was the good, the ugly, and the bad. So the bad is let me start with the positive. The positive is that in Europe we have actually the rules. Like you say, we have thought about this. Of course they're not perfect, and of course they are behind the curve because we are not the ones who are innovating. But at least we're trying to do something to really protect the citizens for these things. So we have the different responses, also Digital Act, Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act. But the question and the bad and the question is, I mean, the implementation and inconsistent implementation and also complacency.
From state to state, or
no. I mean, overall, if you think about the rules that are in place and coming back to the statement that technology is human made, so the rules are also human made. Now, if you think back, then we have governments very much outsourced the regulation in the digital platforms, for example. We have outsourced it to companies. The things that are usually what governments are doing, and the question is who is really, I mean, controlling that? If it is the company's boards who are making the decisions on those things that people see or don't see, or the algorithms, then how is it transparent? So the tools are there, but they are not perfect, and they are, of course, not perfectly implemented.
So you're saying everything from, I know that if I would dial into TikTok, I will not download TikTok on any of my devices. I know too many people in the U.S. Intel world. But if I did, I know I can't find a story about the Uyghurs on it. But also, there are things that big tech can learn about you by what you Google that I don't want my insurance company to know what I'm Googling about my health, that sort of thing. But big tech can figure that out. So you're saying the boards have to decide whether or not they're going to share that information with the insurance company that pays them, and usually it's yes.
On TikTok, I recently heard that, and I haven't checked this, so I'm not sure it's true, but that TikTok in China is actually giving very good educational content, like not really about, you would think, it's more a propaganda, but that was, I haven't checked that, so I don't know if it's true, but in our Europe or a Western sphere, it is more, really very, very content that is really aggressive and boosting also the problems that we already have. I mean, I'm coming back to Moldova and the lessons learned from there. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of TikTok accounts made, and then after they were closed to publish this content and really to get to people about the Russian propaganda. So this is one side of it that we really need to see that what is happening there. Now the problem is that I'm not there, you are not there, and we are trying to keep away, but the children definitely are not, and a lot of people are also not, because apparently it's very addictive. So how do you deal with that? We have the rules in place, but are the rules implemented also correctly in this sense? The problem is that the regulators are behind the curve, like I say. The regulators don't understand the AI, for example, and how can you regulate it when you don't understand it?
That's EU regulators you're talking about.
No, I mean, our regulators are, of course, trying, and this is not my area of expertise currently. I mean, I can talk about the conflicts in the world more, but they are trying to do what is there, but it's maybe not always fully implemented how it was meant to be. I mean, when you have cases where it's clear that it has been used differently than the rules allow, then you also have to have accountability, because if you don't have accountability, that means that you can just do it, nothing happens.
So in Moldova, in that example, were you able to, for instance, get TikTok to take down some of that Russian disinformation? What did the EU do to make the election in Moldova free and fair?
Yeah, we had rapid response teams. So one tool that we used was really to help the Electoral Commission that was cyber attacked massively. But what it comes to, just looking, I have the numbers here. When it comes to the things that we did, I mean, the cybersecurity, as I already mentioned, hybrid rapid response teams that we provided. There was also there were 19,000 cases, more than 19,000 cases of pro-Kremlin disinfo and sanctions perpetrators. We took them down when it comes to disinformation, or the people asked to address this. The problem is, though, Moldova showed it very well, and I guess this is a problem for many smaller countries. These big platforms, they don't have these specific language units, for example. So sometimes if you address this, then, they are not reacting because it's a small country, it's a small amount in terms of their traffic, so to speak. And there are a lot of problems. So some platforms are more cooperative than others. But it is clear that we just received the lessons learned also from the Moldovan side. We have a lot of these things coming up, elections all across our partner countries who have asked also our help to show the misinformation, to try to address this manipulation issues. Now, one of the work tracks that we try to do as well is to really change the election observation methodology. It was made 30 years ago when you didn't have really the digital sphere, and now everything is happening in digital. So this is something that we need to address as well, because if you are not taking into account what happens online, and by the way, people are living their lives online, if you're not taking into account what happens online, then you can say on the basis of the methodology that, we can't say that the elections were not free and fair, although you saw the manipulation, what was going on the internet, because you don't have a methodology for that.
So the Mistral AI CEO was here, and he talked about using AI to look for those kind of disinformation flows on big platforms. So you've got a lot of tech CEOs, top tech people in this audience. It sounds like you want them, even though the idea is regulators are supposed to do this job and policing themselves hasn't worked, it sounds like you would like them to try to use AI and other technology to help you fight disinformation. What are you asking them to do?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, one of the big problems, of course, is the algorithms, and I mean, we can say that the algorithms have to be transparent, but the problem is that the regulators, like I said, I can't tell if the algorithm is transparent or not, because I don't understand this, and that is the problem. And that's why what I said before, we are sort of outsourcing, some of the things we have outsourced to the different digital or tech companies. And now then we end up in a position where actually their boards are making the decisions, which is not the governments who are elected officials who have gotten a mandate from the people to actually make the rules. So I don't have a clear answer how to overcome this. I know I have had also meetings in my previous position with tech people who are, some of them understanding very well the worries, and also really thinking along the lines that the good people or good guys should stick together, because the bad guys definitely do. What brings me to the third point, which is the ugly, which is the authoritarian regimes that are really using the technology now in different ways, and there is also this alliance, really what we are up against. I mean, they are using social media manipulation, they are using deep fakes, also artificial intelligence and AI generated content, troll farms, bots, everything there. Then election interference, we already talked about, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure of the elections, campaign networks, also amplifying polarizing narratives. And this is, by the way, very interesting because, you know, if you take, in terms of Europe, we also have like two big worries when it comes to China and Russia. They are operating different way. China is very good in technology, but not that good in social sciences, whereas Russia is super good in social sciences and not that good in technology. So what Russia does is to really spot the different small conflicts that are within our societies and pour fuel into the both sides. So it's really polarizing narratives. And I remember when I was Prime Minister, sometimes, you know, I have the questions hour. I had the questions hour every Wednesday where members of Parliament got to ask questions, and then you read what they're going to ask, and you know, it's like, I never heard about, statement like this. I said that nobody believes this. This is absurd. I mean, you know, it's false information. Nobody believes. And then I was surprised how many people actually believed the conspiracy theories, and how, you know, the small things got into very big issues in the society.
Oh, so, believe me, I live in Washington, D.C.
Voila.
I see it all the time.
Yeah. And the third thing that they're doing, I mean, surveillance, because like I said, I mean, people are living their lives online. So, you know, governments have to be there, but the question is, what do you do there? Are you the one who is trying to police and make the rules in order to, like, how the marketplace really operates? Or are you trying to use the fact that people are living their lives online to, you know, really survey and check what they're doing? I mean, facial recognition software, internet monitoring, and what you said, by the way, before AI and, not before AI, but there was a very good book. I don't remember the author though, but it was written by one Google data analytic who said the title of the book is Everybody Lies. And the point was, what you said also in your introduction was that, you know, if, you know, you have the polls and people ask, what do you think about this or that, then, you know, people, you know, try to give the answer what you expect that you want to hear. But if they say at the same time Google, a totally different thing, then that is actually what they are thinking about. So actually Google knows much more of people's worries and thoughts or the direction where it's going than these polls actually show. And he has many examples in that book, and one of the examples was he predicted Donald Trump winning the first time on the basis of what they saw, in the Google search engine, what people in these states are looking for, that showed that these people are probably, even if they say that publicly don't have these strong views or they don't express them, then they go to Google and they don't lie there.
Well, what I hear you saying is this is an invitation to the tech execs to join you on the white hat side of things.
Yeah.
I do want to take a couple of questions from Slido. Some people have already sent them in. The speaker from Meta on stage yesterday said that the European Union's regulation is inhibiting innovation. Do you agree?
Of course, we have heard that a lot, and yes, sometimes it is true, and sometimes we're also willing to look into what works and what doesn't. It it depends how you look at it. And I remember when I was member of European Parliament, I saw that there were these really tech-positive people, and then there were more of people who thought about only the risks. Now, how to find the balance, really? I remember at that time I had an argument with one member of European Parliament who said about our health data that it's, all digital, and it's like oh my God, you're going to the most sensitive data there is. Yes, true, but it's also the data that helps the people the most. So it depends how you look at it. But my point being that still, we have rules in offline world. We have rules outside technology. And without those rules, our society would be chaos. So we need also the rules for the technology, especially when it has such a big influence on us.
Your answer to the meta exec is a polite no.
No, my answer is we need rules, which means that, you can't just go... it might also be hindering innovation some point, but I think for the preventing the chaos is also sometimes still necessary, because, as I said, we are up to forces of the alliance of autocracies who are actually using the same tools in a completely different way.
And I have to say, some of the figures that you cited earlier this year from the EU disinfo.com operation, 18 million pieces of Russian disinformation found online last year alone, targeting something like 18,000 cases of pro-Kremlin disinformation. And
that's Moldova. 19,000 actually, more than 19,000. That's Moldova only. That is the lessons learned. There were 100,000 TikTok accounts spreading false information and all these narratives. But it's everyday job. Of course, we have people who are trying to track that. I bring examples also from very recent times. When there was a Polish, the drones were from Russia in Poland, and then there were immediately massive disinformation campaign. And how it had an effect actually was that 30% thought first that the drones are coming from Ukraine. Then 15, or like I have the numbers, I checked that to be very correct. Somebody take that phone?
Yeah.
To be correct, yes. So 30% of Poles thought that the drones were Ukrainian. 25% thought that they came from NATO, and 15% thought that Prime Minister Tusk sent them. Can you imagine? And of course, also our experts worked with Poland to quickly get that under control, but just
they thought this because of what they were reading online.
Yes, because there was a massive disinformation campaign at the same time. The other example is regarding our own European things, which is interesting that they actually also read these things, which sometimes are maybe a bit boring. But anyway, there was the FIMI conference held last year, I think. No, in March. But and there was a report on the matter of FIMI, and so just afterwards there were fake news, and it looked like a story that claimed that unpublished annex was to this report that actually claimed about the disinformation that Ukraine is doing, which was not there. So again, the experts got on top of it and spoke to the platforms, and they took it down. But even small things like this is always going on. The battlefield that we see on the ground, but we also have the battlegrounds of narratives that we are seeing happening every day.
Well, as you have also said, it's a tactic of war, and you need tech to help.
Yes, that's true.
With that, Madam Kallas, thank you very much.
Thank you. Be here.